Let me welcome everyone, and good morning to some of you. Thanks for the opportunity. I'd like to thank Greg and Matt for this opportunity as well and their patience with me over the last year and finally getting this thing put together. I'm pretty excited to be able to talk to all of you today. Couple of things, I guess, real quick. I will try to stay focused on the topic, but feel free to ask questions that are, in the periphery as well as things go along. So the topic that we're going to talk about today is about design, and design first and foremost. And a lot of people see design as any number of things. Some value it, some don't. Some see it as things like the biggest differentiator out there, and others as fluff, and some as magic, and and at the end of the day, art and IP, kind of combined. But for me in this topic, I'd like to talk about our design work and design in general, and a lot of the features of design as creative capital. This will be the overarching topic. In order to kind of level set, I do need to spend a little bit of time giving you some background in this space. But I think, and hopefully at the end of it, you'll understand that creative capital can make you, hopefully, your startup, your project, a little smarter and faster. If you apply design and creative capital, that you can also benefit from a bit more visionary approach and relevance to maybe your market, to the people that you're working with, and we hope create value, and authentic, cultural value, as well as fiscal value. So as we start a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit about Astro, a little bit of background. I think it helps sort of set things in motion. We're here in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, intersection of technology, lifestyle design, as the slide says, but also kind of the west coast of America, the gateway to Asia, the center of technology meets pop culture these days, as well as a variety of other social programs and technologies that are changing the world. So we feel very fortunate to sort of be at ground zero of a lot of these colliding industries. We've worked for a lot of folks. I don't show you this to brag. I show you this because of the diversity. At Astro, we've been able to diversify a lot of what we do by applying the principles of design in a wide variety of areas. What's really great about that for us, and sort of addictive as well, is we get to see the crosstalk between a wide variety of types of companies, including startups. And about 20% of our business is based on working with startups, or offshoots, expansions, if you will, from other brands. A little more background. So we've been doing this for about 23 years. I started down in Palo Alto, brought up to San Francisco about 15 years ago. We've dedicated 20% of our time to be invested in equity-based programs, royalty-based programs, et cetera. Three ways we get compensated, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, is we're hired. That's about 80% of the time. A lot of times we'll co-create and work with partners, and then other times we'll originate and bring our own properties to life. That fusion of technology and pop culture is on purpose. Silicon Valley has a lot of technology. For the time span that I've been here, one of the things that I really wanted Astro to represent was a understanding of culture and consumer facing products and programs and markets. So when we started, purposely went into everything that wasn't technology. So sporting goods, fashion, toys, furnishing, all kinds of things. And then through the years, we've integrated those back into the technology space with an eye toward popular culture. We've been fortunate that a lot of the things we work on get made, and have helped our clients create a lot of revenue. We spun off 3 of our own companies, and we've also co-created many partnerships and brands. Product design. We're fortunate to be first movers in a lot of spaces, but product design is more than any one thing. It's working early on. It's strategy, classic industrial design. There's user experience. There's user interface, design for manufacturing support. There's a lot of levels that are involved in this, and we rely on an extensive, really talented network in order to bring our ideas to life with our clients. We also work and have from day one in the brand space. So developing not only the brand identity, but also the strategy, sometimes the naming. A lot of times these days, the physical implementation and application, as well as the digital applications as well. And so then overall communication packages that could be from print to video. So our strategy there is to actually knit these together strategically as well as experientially And that's one of the reasons we've had both of these, I would say, main lines of business: product design, brand design, from the very beginning. Back to the topic. Design is creative capital. I'll explain that a little bit, maybe in this diagram that's coming up, and see how this feels to you. So we know what venture capital is. We've heard it a lot. We have a sense of what goes on there. The actual definition: funds that are invested in a new or unproven business enterprise. So new and unproven, I think, is, obviously highlighting the risk aspect of it, and that this capital is invested. Well, when we do the same thing with design or creative capital, it becomes design invested in new or unproven business enterprises. And so the idea that creative capital is design, or design equals creative capital, is the basis of the platform of working with startups, thinking a little bit differently about what the design assets and the strategy of the thinking, the implementation of design is, and the value proposition around that. So one of the things we do is we look at designers as often creative capitalists. So what does that mean? If you're not a venture capitalist, you're a creative capitalist, what is it we're doing? Well, in my world and experience, design as creative capital means that design is our currency. So we're providing that much like a VC would with capital. But it's really the deploying of the design that makes it creative capital. So the designers and the design teams being heavily involved help and partner with the teams that we're working with to oversee and commercialize the design, bring it to life, help not only sort of conceptually work on it, but help them get it to the marketplace. And in doing that, we benefit, as well as hopefully our partners benefit, by us pursuing a solid return on investment. So an ROI is still part of the equation, though we're design focused. And all of that brings us to something where I think most designers have a responsibility, and we try to hold on to as part of our role, which is being the human advocate through the process. Everybody else sort of has a mission, but beyond design, we try to look at everything from the actual end consumer, users, or just even a human advocacy point of view. So again, design is creative capital. Just bringing it back to that conversation, and let's dive into that one more time with one other illustration. So I know there's a lot of startups, whether you're hardware or some combination of startups, or people that are getting ready to start new programs. One of the things at Astro is we transact in ideas, and we work with a lot of startups. In fact, I would say that even though we're 23 years in the business, we sort of have a permanent, perpetual startup culture here at Astro. That's on purpose, but it's also a lot of fun. It's exciting. Every day is something new. And so, again, we sort of really immerse ourselves in the idea side, but we know it's a lot more than that. We've worked with a lot of folks that have great ideas, but also they need a team. They obviously need a plan, and classically, they need money. This is sort of the age-old package of let's get something started. I've got this idea, and I want to turn it into a company. I think that's great. Makes total sense. But I would like to challenge it with one thing, which is classically, this money is not just money, it's venture capital. And venture capital is smart money, if nothing else, which is to give you not only access to money and terms and whatnot, but also the talent and the acquisition of talent and networking. Smart money will give you structure. It'll also add motivation. They'll help you figure out your business. They'll help you define and connect you to other business opportunities or partnerships or channels, or whatever it might be. So venture capital is, again, a lot more than money to the process. The challenge I'd like to bring up is that a lot of times the first part is put together. You've got your idea, team, plan, money, and capital now, your venture capital. And so, okay, let's go out and get some design and engineering and manufacturing and prototyping. I'd like to bring up the idea that design, if deployed a little earlier, might bring some of these other attributes. So design as creative capital really is helping you as founders or you as owners create your vision, bring the image, the branding, insights, understand who your consumers are, bring your ideas from paper and dialogue maybe into the real world, whether it's models or storytelling or whatnot. A lot of times IP, and you can get the IP path started earlier. Validation. There's so many great tools now to get early consumer validation and interest. All of this reduces your risk and starts to connect you to real-world manufacturing and development communities that can also help you build your plan as you're moving along as well. So I think design is not just design, just like money is not just money, but design as creative capital. The only thing is, I think it would be beneficial if we move design up into the first offering, or the first construct, if you will, of your startup. So imagine if you had, before even attracting money, or maybe in parallel, which happens quite often, we're helping you as designers, develop the vision, branding, the insights, all of these things that creative capital brings to the party. And then taking that out to attract venture capital. You can imagine the benefits. You're further down the road. You're a lot more polished. You've actually got a lot more information. You've developed your ideas further so that, you can maybe bring in different types of venture capital to supplement that or complementary, as well as, all the way to hopefully improving your valuation. The other part is once you marry all of these things together, you've really got the platform for launching what would more than likely be a very successful startup. And partnerships. The venture capital doesn't just give you the money and leave. They stay around as a partner. Thinking of creative capital and design along the same lines allows you to do that as well. So whether you build that in-house as a core competency, or you continue to work with outside, design developers and creative capitalists, they're in for the long haul because hopefully, their compensation path is in line with yours, much like a venture capitalist. The other thing everybody needs a little bit, regardless of all of these great things, is luck. Got to have a little luck when it comes to the startup. So, level setting back one more time to creative capital. Design for us has been, obviously a service and applied art. It's also a lot of principles. It's sort of skill sets and whatnot. But as we've gotten into different types of projects, they do take on, different forms of even creative capital. And so one of the things I wanted to do is share with you 4 quick snapshot case studies of projects that we've used, what I would say are creative capital to help these companies launch, grow, and hopefully be the successes they're shooting for. First one here is a company called Link. It's linked by AKC, which stands for the American Kennel Club. When they came to us, they were originally asking for us to basically create a Fitbit for dogs, a wearable, a fitness tracker. As we got into the program, we realized, well, what you really need is a whole company's worth of assets in the creative space. So we ended up helping them name the company. It's called Link. American Kennel Club is their sponsor, if you will, so that was an important part of the business. But things like your tagline, do you speak dog? And the look and feel, the brand character of the product, the digital aspects, the copy. So all the contextual work, that's all design work that, eventually has to show up anyways. But if you can bring it earlier to the process, the continuity and the confidence that comes into that allows you to raise capital and have those dialogues a lot, not just easier, but in a way that, I guess we've seen, especially with companies like this, bring the whole story to life well beyond just like, here's a smart product. And so you can see here, like the packaging, going all the way to the application of the brand to out-of-box look and feel, all the digital work, we're doing advertising. And then we have a long-term relationship. I think we've been with Link now for 2 years, an outstanding company that is continuing to grow and pioneer in what is a brand new wearable space. Another company here from the Bay Area was sort of unique, and this is more of a co-creation model. So we sat down with the founders of Soul Republic in the early days of their business and defined, like, how do you want to differentiate yourself in a very crowded, commodity-driven space? So they had a good idea of, wanting to stay at a certain price point, and they had some relationships at retail that they could leverage. But the focus and the goal was to hit those price points, so thus design had to come in and prove itself early on, but then also to communicate to the demographic that they were pursuing. Happened to be the 20-something emerging EDM market. And so as we helped them develop the company and the products, we also were doing, again, the identity, applying design to their communications. We're applying it to all aspects of photography and to partnerships as well. So design principles, again, getting applied earlier and maybe faster than they could even afford to, comes out of a co-creation model and sort of a alternative compensation models, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So here with Soul Republic, again, one of those things where we're able to help them bring the story to life a lot faster. Interesting here was they launched the company on Facebook. In fact, they were talking about the company with all the different brand assets prior to the products emerging for almost a year on Facebook and starting to build their, their culture and their cult status with the industry. Third project comes out of a gaming space. Astro has a lot of gaming experience, as you can see here. We did quite a few gaming products, continue to working in AR and VR and AI and all the other acronyms you can line up. And recently, if some of you have seen, Astro Gaming did its 10-year anniversary and was actually acquired from Skullcandy by Logitech. So that's at the end of the story. But the beginning of the story was we had to bring the idea alive in a way that built, if you will, relationships with communities in and out of the gaming space. So the design assets or the creative capital was used to get in the pits with gamers, professional gamers, and understand what their needs were, understand who they were, what the channels were. We used design assets and creative capital to attract partnerships such as Major League Gaming early in the process, and with Xbox. They could visualize where we were headed. So our partnerships grew because the assets were created even before the business was formed. As time went on, obviously, the co-creation space and the origination space around Astro Gaming led to a 6-year run before we sold it to Skullcandy in 2011, and then continued to grow the brand at retail to the size and shape it is today, all the way to the Logitech acquisition. But it all happened by seeding people visually with prototypes and storylines and design assets from retail all the way to direct-to-consumer design, not just storylines, but introductions of big ideas that were changing an industry as we went. Finally, this is another project where we started as a concept vehicle, again, bringing an idea to life in the form of a watch. This is a watch company that we co-own at this time. But by using design assets, we were able to get the press interested before it was a company. We got supply chain lined up and excited about the project before it was a company. We started to produce more and more partnerships with not only retail but also manufacturing partners based on these design creative capital assets before it was a company. All of these things allowed us to gel and turn this from an idea into an ongoing watch brand. Part of it is you can express who the consumer is, who you're trying to talk to and work with, where the products go, and how you then, do you have just one product, or are you expressing a complete roadmap of products as you move forward? So the -8 program is a good example of sort of going from concept early on and then building the company pieces around the program. So hopefully these are 4 cases that can kind of give you a sense of where design coming in early also not only set the tone for what the business was going to be about, but also the structure, the partnerships, and eventually the return on investment being protected for some amount of the founders, the originators of a lot of the IP, but also sort of put you in the driver's seat earlier for defining the whole structure of the business. So with that, we'll transfer into the next part of this. So I know that a lot of you are startups. A lot of you are, trying to figure out like, okay, this is great. Does creative capital make sense for me? My hardware project may be very extensive, super complex, or it's not even necessarily something that I can even, begin to approach. Well, honestly, a lot of the design and the development community, even the manufacturing community, loves to talk to entrepreneurs and get a sense of what's going to happen early in the process. So when you have, the right people in place and the right, basically, fiscal structure, there are ways for you to engage with and deploy and acquire, if you will, creative capital earlier in the process. So touch on a few of those for you here as well. I think it starts with an overall perspective on partnering with design. A lot of times people think they're hiring a design team and development team, kind of like you might like an accountant or a lawyer to actually do a project. But actually, even with those service businesses, you usually have longer relationships. You set up a reason to be, working together, to bring together a timeline and a visual, tangible way of working together. And I think design should be a little less project-based and a little bit more of a partner mentality. I think when you do this and create this sort of idea around a multidisciplinary holistic design partner, it keeps you from having to go to like multiple agencies as well. So there are a number of firms out there that can cover a variety of disciplines. So branding, packaging, digital, physical product. And those of us that have been around for a little while longer are also our networks for actually getting things done and made become quite valuable in accelerating the whole process. And then the other part, though, is like in doing this is like there's a way to kind of plan for that. Like R&D and development is a big expense for any company of any size. But if you have a long-term model, let's say with a sharing upside potential with your design development partners, there's ways to spread that risk. There's different ways to categorize that investment. And, part of that is spreading out your early risk and, protecting your capital so that you can grow the business and, and create that great return. The other part is, for us anyways, has been we've seen that design is kind of the beginning of empowering people to develop design in the C-suite, if you will, so at an executive level. So when you partner with design early, and I would say this with any of our clients or any of our friends, if you're in the hardware business, you need to have a design discipline inside your walls, maintaining, developing, collaborating, sometimes leading the conversations in order to continue, to keep not only the consistency of the design and the communications, but also, to have a future and to have a perspective on what's next and to constantly be focused on that. More and more as you see designers and developers as CEOs, we're seeing that the visionary capabilities of design in the C-suite is super valuable. So we're big advocates of, even though we might be working with startups that can't afford those disciplines at that level yet, plan for it, put it in your plan, start looking for talent, or if you're working with an outside design partner, they can actually help you build that by helping you hire people into the C-suite as well. 3 ways that we, and I've seen most people, engage with creative capital. And so there's 3 of these, and I'll kind of touch on each one of them. Classically is hire, right? I mean, service business is something, you scope a project and you hire someone and you do the project and thank you very much, we'll come back when we need you again. Even there, I think you can take a more partnering, collaborative relationship. A lot of people in this space will take the time to try a project, see how you work together. But a lot of times when you're a startup, you got one shot at this. And you want to look at someone's history and decide okay, I think I can work with these guys long term, but I don't want to keep bringing multiple agencies up to speed. So hiring is definitely a great way to start thinking in terms of how do I extend a longer term relationship. And that's where we'll get into some of the co-create and originate. So, when you hire, look for that holistic designer partner, someone who basically can help you, as a strategic advisor, not just someone that can design your project and, take the money and build a lot of hours, but actually be an advisor partner with a strategic, lens on your business. So what that means is a lot of times you have to share more about what you're trying to do, your hopes and dreams and hard realities of your business, and make it a bit more strategic so that they can help you. And so, again, that partnering mentality, even if it's a higher situation, is super helpful. The idea, too, that, again, I touched on the broader development networks. Early in the process, I think more now than ever, getting a handle on what it's going to cost you to develop what it is you're producing earlier in the process. Design teams and creative capitalists can actually help you with that, help you pick and choose maybe the right networks and the right partners, or give you some, filters for having those conversations earlier in the process, even sometimes fully developed design assets as well. And then the other part is, when you're hiring somebody, is also you're thinking about that relationship, have them start thinking about, beyond the first project. You start thinking about that. It's a little difficult. It's kind of like when you're raising venture capital. you classically want to be focused on your one thing, but also if you're really overly focused on your one thing and you don't project a vision for multiple things or a roadmap or a path forward, then you can get stuck in the one-trick pony category. So your design team can actually help you start to bring that alive and visualize that while you're very focused on your first program. So that's sort of the hired category. One of the things I think is kind of interesting in this space is, as you think about, how you hire, you can still at this point consider different compensation paths. So like, as I mentioned here, retainers and even some element of modest upside as incentive. Obviously, the more aligned you are in the success of a project with any of your partners, not just design, there's benefit to how you continually not only launch the first product, but start thinking about the business overall. So the hire space is, let me see, move on here to the next one, which is in the co-create space. Again, now think of it as a holistic design investor. So we have a lot of startups that ask us to, provide our services at a reduced, amounts, or some aspect of equity or some part of an upside potential with their business. There's a variety of tools that you can do that with. So that's something to consider early on. We'll talk about that in a second. But that holistic design investor, if you can turn your designer into a creative capitalist with an investor mentality, there's a lot of extra benefits that come from that sort of relationship. So everything we've had in the hire slide applies here for the most part, but also now that you're into this co-creation partnering mode, when you consider your design partner in this space, they can take on an executive role. And there's a variety of projects we've been involved with and a lot of our peers as well, where they actually take on a CDO role or an EVP of design or some sort of role, that is as not only an investor, but actually has an executive responsibility inside of your company, even if it's temporary, before you might even add that discipline yourself. One of the great things about that, again, as an investor, and is they see the potential for growth, not only just launch, but it gives you and them more incentive to drive your roadmap on future projects. Like if there's, if they can see a potential beyond sort of the first fee scenario package of engagement, then you're aligned on an upside scenario within the company. All of those things just give you more critical mass as you continue to grow your business. So as we talk about the compensation part of it, thinking in terms of long-term comp, these mixes of like advances, royalties, equity, warrants, blanking here, but we do these quite often too. I mean, what you're seeing right now, you're seeing SAFs and SAFEs, for example, as you get into like cryptocurrency and things. But convertible notes, for example, are probably the most well-known tool, if you will, vehicle for taking in an investment, early on in the process. There's some tricks around this that kind of make what you put together valuable, because sometimes you're there pre-venture capital as a design team and a development team, but also can help offset the balance sheet and how you actually carry this investment early on. So it's worth getting under the hood and learning about what all these different vehicles are if you're going to bring a design and a development team in as a co-creator or investor in your program. And the last one is originate. So this one's kind of interesting. More and more we're seeing clients, whether they're startups, technologists, or even big companies that want to expand beyond their normal boundaries and take their brand or sub-brands into new categories. We're spending more and more time here ourselves. And so similar to the hire and co-create slides you saw earlier, thinking now is like, okay, what if I have these guys as a deeper business partner? They're not only providing a creative capital, but they're really helping us grow our business by originating the company or an offshoot or commercializing a technology. So as you get into that space, when you have a great design partner that you think can do this for you, ask them, task them to do this type of work. Help, basically create, where your brand can go. In doing that, you're going to create new IP. hopefully, the right kind of design work quite often, goes beyond sort of the simple application of design, but it creates tangible IP, whether it's in branding, packaging, experiences, or hardware. And together, you can develop this, and also, as mentioned here, creates ways to either sell or license this IP, which also, is just adding more value to your company. So, and you think about the compensation aspects of this, the longer term compensation is actually, partnering deeply with a design and development team, all the way to the fact that you're setting up annual budgets. Your equity is in alignment. Maybe you have joint venture structures outside of what's going on, but it's not impossible to to set these in motion from an early on relationship with a variety of different design and development teams. So hire, co-create, originate are three of the buckets that we quite often recommend people consider as they're putting together relationships with Creative Capital. So just in summary, we're coming up on our timeline here. Just to touch on these really quickly. So reducing risk for investors. Again, the summary of benefits for incorporating Creative Capital beyond design in what you're proposing. This quite often reduces the risk for investors. They can see more. You have more assets that you've used to checkpoint with your end consumer or retailers or manufacturing partners. This will help you attract and inspire capital. So the venture side again, or private equity or friends and family, give them more confidence. But it also attracts partners, people that want to work with you. They think you've got your act together maybe sooner than you would normally. It also helps you hire and attract talent. All of these things, again, if they can start to see like there's going to be a brand identity, there's a culture there that I can relate to. So helping you early on with these branding elements helps you define and express your company culture as well, which more and more these days is sort of a big differentiating factor when everybody's competing for the best talent at all levels. You've got to provide early on a lot of the cultural benefits as well. The other part is just elevating the overall desire factor for partners, the press, employees and talent. All of those things come into play as well because they can see what you're talking about, not just listening to your words. Enabling the consumer feedback sooner. This is quite often super helpful, even if it's just quick snippets of being able to talk to people and get their reactions, because they can tangibly interact with what you're proposing. I often think that Creative Capital turbocharges the IP timelines, cost estimates, networks, as we mentioned here. The sooner you can bring your ideas to some sort of fruition, especially in hardware, and start to outline at least and protect the value, the IP value, start that process earlier on, the better. Design allows you to do that as opposed to postponing it post-capital or post even proof of concept prototypes. Lastly, a big goal of all of this is to help you as the startup owner, facilitator, partner, improve your valuation, the ROI potential. So, design not only accelerates and sort of solidifies a lot of these things, it can help you with the bottom line of the business and ultimately, preserves the founder equity, which is something we're big believers and advocates of. The longer you can hold on to your equity before you even need to bring in venture capital, the better. And usually the design-centered creative capitalist paths are a little more reasonable when it comes to valuations and techniques for deploying their assets early on than classic venture capital. That concludes my slides, and I think we're moving into Q&A.
All right. Thank you so much, Brett, for that wonderful talk right there. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute, put everybody on Q&A mode here, and then you'll get a prompt on your screen allowing you to select yourself to be ask Brett a question. So I'm going to do that right now. So if anybody has any questions now, go ahead and type your question into the chat box there, or the prompt that was just added onto your screen. And I'll select them as they come in. Perfect. All right, so I got 2 questions. So first question is coming from Eric, so I'm going to go ahead and give Eric the floor here, Brett. So hold tight. Eric, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Perfect.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Good.
I can hear you too. So go ahead, Eric. You got the floor, and Brett, here you go.
Yeah, so what's the best way to get in touch with you guys? I think that we're at a point where we could really use your services.
Oh, well, that would be great. Best way is my email is at the bottom here. It's brett@astrostudios.com or new business at astrostudios.com, and our business director will be happy to, get on the phone and talk about your program.
Great. Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Your idea of co-creating and giving just the use of your studio. I'm in the process of raising money right now, but for the investors, having a really good studio involved would just be tremendous help.
Well, that's great. We play that role quite often. We have sort of we've been doing this for a while, so there's a little bit of a filter on how we do that, and we look for, opportunities where we can really enhance that scenario, and so we'd appreciate the conversation anytime.
All right, great. Thanks, Brett.
All right, Eric. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Eric. All right. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to pick Nikolai here next. Nikolai, can you hear me? Nikolai? I can hear a sound coming in. I can hear you now. Perfect. Brett, can you hear us still?
Yes.
Wonderful. Nikolai?
Is like a little more, I'm a hardware designer myself, industrial design, and the question is more around like how do I tackle that as a startup? Like if I can put it the best possible, I just want to focus on creating it and everything that involves in that, and the IP is like kind of like slowing it down, like to find like a lawyer, how it works in the West Coast.
So your voice went a little digital off and on there, but I think I got the gist of it, which is how do you move forward with developing the IP while you're developing the ideas, okay? And yeah, that process is a little daunting, quite honestly. It's probably the best way in the world to talk yourself out of doing something is to really get under the hood with all the legal aspects. But highly recommend that you find somebody that fits your financial position on the legal front in the patent attorney space, or even good advisors in that space. And because there's things you can do with preliminary patents, and as well as just sort of how you create prior art and original art for a lot of things you're doing, and showing you when the right time is to invest in pushing the button on all the legal costs that it takes to develop the IP fully. But having a little bit of momentum there, so obviously it's a little more than patent pending, but that's fine, honestly. It's just to get things moving. So one, you probably know that you're not infringing is super helpful. So just so you're not wasting your time in certain areas, or so you can design past some of the stumbling blocks or areas that someone else might have already proceeded with. So it is worth figuring out who your just like a design partner is, who your legal partner is, but don't let it hold you back. We've presented many ideas to potential partners that had only a minimal amount of IP protection or even preliminary sort of clearing. Because sometimes it's just about getting the idea in front of the right kinds of partners to actually get things produced. Whether if you're licensing or selling, for example, ideas, or if you're really building the company, then again back to you need a legal representation at all different points. So start looking for them just like you would any other partner. But you can pace it. You don't have to pay for everything up front. You don't have to pay for a lot of things until you actually you can either get this funded, you can get this again licensed or sold to a partner as well. So run them both in parallel.
Okay. Am I still hearing?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. What should I think about in terms of like creating design assets and prototypes, and then actually want to start getting users and testing it? Is there anything I should think about there in terms of IP?
Every project is different, to be honest with you. So most people think they have to overdevelop before they start talking to consumers. So, sometimes a minimal, a really rough mock-up and, a line drawing, you can still sit down with people and ask them, how do you like this product? How do you interact with it? If there's a digital aspect of it, you can bring that alive and, digitally quite easily, or storyboards. And you can start engaging people if it's in the consumer space. If it's a lot more complex than that, then you might have to take things to a higher fidelity. But what I see most people overdo is fully develop it before they get good consumer feedback or input, again, in certain categories. Some categories you don't need it because it's like there's just so much, we're all consumers first, experience, if you will, around certain product categories. So, a good competitive analysis will show you maybe what everyone else is doing, so you don't infringe, but you can bring some of those ideas to life further because of people's familiarity with the types of products. Does that make sense?
I hope I can sneak in a second question. It's more like, how do you find those smart capital venture capitalists that want to look at hardware?
That's sometimes the trick, honestly. As much as we think everybody likes all types of products, there are some people that definitely are more interested in certain categories. There are interesting enough new hardware funds that are kind of coming together, if you will. Some here in the Bay Area. It really just depends on the category. Number one thing I would do is if you can find investors that have invested in like category products, you're going to have a lot more success bringing them up to speed with your idea and gaining their interest than trying to pioneer into a space where the venture team has never gone before.
Thanks for answering the question, Brett.
Sure. Thank you.
Hey, Nikolai, just kind of hopping in here. There's an article that Bolt, they're a VC firm that invests in hardware. They put an article out last year that highlights a lot of the different firms that are investing in hardware. I'm going to link to the blog post here. You can check that out. Good resource to look into. Yep.
That's great.
Perfect. All right. Is there anybody else out there that has a question here? Now would be the time to go ahead and put it in the request or type in the chat box. Go ahead and get those questions answered. And also, we have recorded the session today, so it will be accessible through the Hardware Massive Resource Center. So in case you want to come back and rewatch the talk and see some of the key points that Brett had mentioned, we'll have that available here hopefully within a week or two. Other than that, I don't see anybody else here that has a question, Brett.
Good. We've answered them all. That's wonderful.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, is there anything last? If I want to get a hold of you, Brett, or put your email address, I can type it into the chat box here if they want to send you additional questions to your team.
Sure. It's Brett at astrostudios.com. Also, any other follow-up, info at astrostudios.com. Either one of those will eventually get to me.
Perfect. I just typed in your email address here in the chat box, so everybody's got that, and then I'll link it into our recap here as well. Perfect. Well, if there's any other questions, I guess that concludes today's Hardware Massive webinar. Appreciate everyone coming out here this morning, and or if you're across the world somewhere else in no time zone, appreciate you staying up late. So other than that, have a wonderful day or evening, and appreciate Brett coming on today, and we'll hope to see you around soon sometime.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, everyone.
All right, everyone. Have a good day.